Good morning, all delegates, and joining with our chairperson of our council, Fergal, in welcoming each and every one of you. A warm welcome to our conference today. Our conference is an integral part of the work of the council, and the various perspectives that you bring as researchers, policymakers, school leaders, or teacher practitioners is rich and diversified, and adds to the quality of the deliberations of our engagement today. Also, a very warm welcome to our attendees who are attending remotely, and again your contributions in terms of the various queries and observations of the presentations to date are warmly welcome. I particularly want to thank Professor Emer Ring, Professor Deborah Robinson and Dr. Linda O'Sullivan for setting the context and indeed the challenge for the presentation I'm now going to share with you in terms of very much learning from the past, taking on the responsibility of leading towards inclusion and ensuring excellence and equity for all. It's a challenge that the Council and that the NCSE executive staff very much welcome with enthusiasm and excitement. In terms of taking you through the presentation, I'll be dealing with essentially four facets. In terms of the historical context of where we're at now, the organisational restructuring that we've been embarking over the last couple of months, the standards of operational excellence in which the NCSE will be setting out its stall in terms of how we work with all stakeholders and each and every schooling community in this country, and the parents and guardians that we're privileged and fortunate to be working with. And then I'll share with you an overview of current developments that we're progressing. Professor Emer would have shown with us in terms of the massive growth in special education over the last 20 years. Indeed, if you focus in the last 10 years, you get a sense of that growth and profile in special education activity in this country, with an 81% increase in SNA numbers, heading towards over 21,000 SNAs in the system coming next September, an over 44% increase of special education teachers in the system, and an increase of almost fivefold, heading towards sixfold in terms of the number of special classes in this country, a doubling of applications in terms of school transport with assistive technology, and again, all underpinned by recent trends in terms of the prevalence rates now coming in at 3.1%, and a figure that would have been used very much as a reputable source of 1.5 over 18 months ago. And again, the government in this sense putting its investment in terms of over 27% on a year-to-year basis in terms of exchequer funds in the investment of special education in this country. Peter alluded to my career in education as such, and I remember at the time with the formation of the NCSE, I was a school principal, and I was very fortunate at the time to be working closely with Antoinette Cahill, who was now current team manager, but my school senior at the time, and I saw firsthand the insight, the knowledge of the students with additional needs, and the supports that needed to be put in place in a secondary school as they progressed towards their schooling activities. The NCSE is a wonderful organisation that has contributed so much to the support and development of special education in this country. 2017 presented another significant landmark for the evolving organisation, with the amalgamation of three support services in terms of the Special Education Support Service, the National Behaviour Support Service, and the Visiting Teachers Service. COVID, unfortunately, didn't come at a good time for all of us, and as we know, any of us who've been involved in amalgamations, they take a good 4 to 5 years to actually bed down to get that sense of coherence and unity of voice that's required for service delivery. And obviously, that's something in recent times with the expansion of the organisation, we're very much progressing in terms of condensing the potential and opportunity that the amalgamation all those years ago presented. I've shared with you the significant growth in terms of special education in this country. All of those figures were just going in one direction. They were all exponentially growing. Of course, it's a source of concern, as we've heard this morning shared with us, when phone calls are not being returned, when emails are perhaps not being listened to. but you have to say that there's somewhat of a reason for that. In that 20-year period, the number of staff within the NCSE remains the same and remains static. If you have some figures that are very much indicating to you that the growth and profile of activity at a bare minimum is doubling, in certain situations is 5 or 6 times the magnitude, then it's no wonder that sometimes calls are not answered or emails are not returned. Of course, in that, and I very much commend and thank Karen for sharing her story with us this morning, there will be elements of poor service delivery, underperformance. We very much want to hear their stories, and it's unfortunate we have to hear them, but we want to hear them, because from that you can actually do something about it and put in place the standard of service delivery. I remember, and I particularly welcome so many department officials this morning. I particularly want to mention Martina Mannion, and at the time, newly into the role, with the senior management team at the time, we explained and presented a business case to Martina, and she listened sympathetically. But what she did differently was she listened proactively as well. And I can only commend her and so many officials in the department that supported us in terms of presenting our business case to both ministers and to the government in terms of what was required. And the announcement that was welcomed by all of us in terms of enhancing and growing the organisation further. I'll just share with you our thinking at both council level and as an executive team. We went back to basics. The temptation was very much there. Yes, we've got the funding, just throw it in immediately. But we took stock because we knew there was service deficiencies, imperfections within the organisation, and we needed to get underneath the bonnet of the organisation. And we focused very much on all aspects of the culture of the organisation, in the sense of clearly define, articulating what the shared values for us were, what the shared values that our stakeholders have, that you have, what gets us up in the morning, what excites us in terms of supporting special education in this country. Emer would have shared with us the various 3 strategy statements. Again, we went back to basics. We asked ourselves, where do we want to be in 10 years' time? And we developed and devised a new strategy statement. I'll take you through with you in terms of the various structures we've devised and developed in recent times. And of course, then our staff recruitment campaigns, which I'll share with you at a later stage. The continual development, the strengthening of each element and facet of our culture organisation is part of our leadership framework. That's very much embedded right throughout the organisation, and embedded right within that is a consistent series of stakeholder engagements. Every voice within the system matters to us, and we want to hear it and contribute it, and it feeds into the growth and development of the organisation and the enhancements for service delivery that so many people have articulated to us. And ultimately, we hold ourselves accountable in terms of our ability to deliver the results, the full complement of results on all facets of service delivery. When we were articulating our values, we went back to the real essence, what drives an organisation forward, and that's the importance of vision. And we're going to Steve Jobs and highlighting, if you're working on something exciting that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you. And you can strip back all the elements of research, all the various articles of legislation, all the nuances, all of the debates of policy, but it still comes down to each and every single one of us. A young child on a school corridor, a young child that's seeking an enrolment in a school, or a young child that's looking for enhanced progression pathways after they're leaving schools. And I can only commend the 3 students I was fortunate to meet in recent times. Sean, who has finished a special class placement in Cork City and now going on to a youth reach placement. Perhaps the bravest young girl I've ever met in my life, Joy, who's in a special school in Cork. And Laura, with the tremendous support of her parents, in the Field of Dreams in terms of the Down Syndrome Association and in the lush fields of Ballincollig in Cork City, and now who's actually working in the bonds. That's what drives us within the NCSE. I know it drives us, all stakeholders here today, but it is ultimately making sure the child is at the heart of service delivery and that there is no stone unturned, no effort left sideways in terms of getting the very best for the children that we're privileged to work with. We set out a very lofty stall. We have a very exacting council. They set standards first, which we welcome, but they set exalting standards. And between us, and linking, engaging right throughout the organisation with our staff, we've revisited our strategy statement, and our vision that's driving us is supporting a world-class inclusive education system for Ireland. We've achieved so much in recent times, and we've so much more work to do, but together we can actually very much drive progressively towards that vision. Underpinning the articulation, the creation, the development of that vision were the design principles. First and foremost, staff were key to our organisation. We wanted to become an employer of choice with staff welfare and development at the heart of our corporate strategy. We wanted every facet of the organisation thinking together. We have so many strands of service delivery. We wanted to be thinking systematically and creating that constancy of value for each child we were working with, every family we were engaging with, and the unique relationship that we have with every schooling community up and down the length of this country. Schools have moved so much in the last decade or so in terms of supporting and delivering special education. There's more to come, and we very much want to take on our supportive role in terms of assisting schools in that journey of transformation with our support, expert practice, guidance and advice. And the Minister alluded to this morning in terms of policy advice, progressing realisation of an inclusive education system. And we very much want to play our part in integrating research policy and practice with a view to achieving that. We were fortunate to avail of the expertise of Ernst & Young with national expertise and international expertise in organisation redesign. And we, as a senior management team, and right down through all staffing levels of the organisation, have been working with them in recent times. And that led to a number of very significant documents being shared with us and being shared with our Governing Council in terms of setting out the pathway to completely maximise the benefit of resources that were coming our way. And you can see the timeline there from December of last year to where we're now currently at and where we're embarking on our recruitment campaign. And it was an immense source of welcome and delight to us at NCSE level in terms of our recent CNO campaign, well over 700 applicants for the role. Again, confirming the passion and commitment in this country to become involved in special education support. And we really welcome that success to date with the recruitment campaign, and we'll be building on that. We got under the bonnet of every facet of the organisation. We even examined the absentee rates of staff at various levels, and again they compared very favourably, notwithstanding the complex, highly moving dynamic of service demands that we were working in. We looked at the volumes of activity in each particular county. We looked at the profile of staffing assignments in each particular county. We looked at the growth demands in each county, and we looked at the supply and time and effort that was required in terms of service delivery. We went underneath the bonnet and then supported that by Power BI software that as we move forward with evolving movements and trends. And there was various statistics. Peter alluded to as a Corkman in Croke Park. Unfortunately, as a Corkman, we haven't been here enough. And when you look at some tables, you see, obviously, unfortunately, the population Dublin being higher than Cork. But you could see that the volume of activity in relation to special education, that it was showing up certain anomalies. And we had to be very responsive to that. If there was increased demand for whatever reasons in the particular region, we had to be versatile in terms of assigning staff to those particular regions. And again, that was the benefit of time and hindsight in evaluating and carefully analysing all aspects of the data and applications we were working with. And the benefit of the software, we can drill into the demand at every particular region within the country and every staffing element, staffing role within the organisation, and project at a certain moment in time or fast forward in a number of years' time in terms of the demand. And that was what was required in terms of the expectations are very high for the NCSE in service delivery, but equally we had to apply the software that would give us the capability and the confidence to reply to the service delivery demands. In terms of, we revisited our strategy statement, and again we formulated with the guidance of a Vision 26, and it's a transformation program. When you get an opportunity of enhancing your organisation with a 50% staffing input, you're never again going to get a greater opportunity of transforming the organisation or transforming the service delivery. And that's very much what we embrace at staff level with the guidance of Council in terms of setting out our strategic goals to 2026. And we want to deliver that top quality, world-class inclusive education system for Ireland. And that will be driven by the highest standards of service delivery. We will be judged, and rightly so, first and foremost on our terms and ability to engage effectively, to support effectively young children, engage properly, consistency with families around the country, and ultimately assist individual schooling communities on their journey. Behind the scenes, we have to ensure that there's an integrated approach to research policy and practice, and the very best advice, the most up-to-speed advice, both with a national development and an international perspective, is being given to our schooling communities. And again, that we're very much creating that dynamic, fit-for-purpose, responsive organisation, and again, fully supporting and empowering our staff to do that. And there are various strands to that, with the oversight of Council, the leadership of the senior management team, carefully articulated strategy statement, and then a number of sub-strategies outlined ranging from ICT strategy, delivery service strategy, total quality management service strategy, in terms of setting out what we want to deliver for this country. Ultimately, what it means for us is that we'll have a workforce that has the skills and support that they need. The previous presentations has acknowledged the expertise from parents and schooling communities around the country that is within the NCSE. We very much want to ensure that that support for their skills is very much enhanced and empowered over the years ahead. The presentation from Professor Robinson and Dr. Sullivan very much indicate an improvement of systems and processes, and the requirement to deliver effective services to our communities. That's very much what we want within the context and outline of our strategy statement. That led to us developing 5 pillars as such within the organisation. And again, the first pillar being led by Principal Officer Helen Walsh in terms of integrating policy and practice and ensuring that the schooling communities in terms of frontline service delivery are very much up to speed with policy and practice integrated together. And again, that our backline support led by Kate McGrain in terms of service delivery, our HR function under the leadership of Trevor Jordan, and again is very much ensuring with a view to properly empowering and enabling the staff that we're so privileged to have working with us. Finance, we have very much, with the corporate demands, with governance requirements for all national agencies, that we're ensuring that's fit for purpose. And again, very exciting, and both Emer very much acknowledged it, and speakers from the floor this morning in terms of the importance of teachers as researchers. And we are introducing a new element of practice-based research that is working with universities around the country with a view to seeing good practice that must be shared with every schooling community in this country, and an exciting initiative we're very much looking forward to becoming involved in. And the 5th pillar, led by Andrew Tornston in terms of systems of innovation, making greater use of the immense source of data that we have up and down the country, and that we're very much looking ahead using more innovative applications of software to ensure that we have a more effective, robust service delivery. We very much welcome the research on frontline services, and the key messages from us as an executive team in terms of communication, the capacity of our staff, the importance of face-to-face contact, the sustained personalised contact with NCSE, the trusting collaborative joined-up approach, and removing the administrative burden. We very much welcome those messages. We had a sense that they were the key messages we would be hearing, and we have been working progressively in recent times. What we were looking at in terms of our frontline delivery then was that we would be very much promoting and supporting management teams with the capacity to deliver, very much with roles that were fit for purpose, and a structure that facilitates communication and eradicates the silos in terms of a national agency that's spread completely around the country. And we had to be completely focused on our relationships and in terms of pupils, parents and schools around the country, and each of the stakeholders we're privileged to engage with. We wanted to get back to the quality of expectation of delivery, that the valuable high-profile role that CNOs had with individual schooling communities in this country, and we are setting out a stall in terms of 17 regions that are shared with you there, and again taking on the key messages that we've been hearing from our own staff, from stakeholders, complemented by the research we've heard this morning in terms of offering that frontline delivery that's required. That frontline delivery must and will always be within the NCSE, driven by a relentless focus on students that is very much built on local knowledge, sustained personalised relationships, it's responsive, and it's a continued service, and ultimately that we're holding ourselves to account. If there are deficiencies in service delivery, we want to hear about them and set in place the measures and responses that are required to deliver at the expectation that the public rightly have of us. It's useful to reflect on the growth and development in recent times, and Emer referred to the Ombudsman report, and it was hard-hitting in many regards in terms of the forward planning. And again, I have to commend the collaborative work we've been doing with our department colleagues in recent times in getting ahead of the growth and demand that's required. And you can see there, in the last 10 years at primary level, number of classes going from 355 to 1,800. And again, we have set out our stall in knowing exactly for the next 3 years where the demand will be for every county within this country, as highlighted correctly in the Ombudsman report last year. Similarly, at post-primary level, the phenomenal growth in the last 10 years have gone from less than 100 special classes to well over 742 classes then. And again, likewise, we know exactly where the demand for special classes will be for the next 3 years, and then responding effectively and efficiently to that. We set out our stall in terms of operational excellence. That depends on the leadership commitment right throughout the organisation, staff participating and developing their own skills right throughout the organisation itself, strengthening the culture that I've already alluded to. We're very much a process-driven organisation. It's about sharpening and fine-tuning each of those processes, that we're making effective use of data. And ultimately, it's about the quality of relationships, as we've heard from the presentation this morning, and that we're relentlessly focused on student, parents, schooling communities, and likewise, our quality of engagement with stakeholders. I'll just very quickly share with you in terms of recent consultations we've been doing in that regard. It revolved around the exceptional review process within schools, looking at the number of SNAs that are assigned to individual schooling communities. And we would have heard from a variety of sources that the process wasn't at the level it should be, both from our own individual staff, from conferences like these, individual school visits, representations, or formal reports that have been produced by various school management, school representative bodies in recent times. If you want to know how to fix something, you go to the recipient, you go to people who you're dealing with. And we did that in terms of direct focus groups with primary principals through the channels of our good colleagues in the INTO, with IPPN at both principals and post-primary principal levels, and then with St. Michael's House at special school level. And we have a fourth focus group that will be looking at the tailored focus needs of Forest Patrunum. It goes back to the principles of operational excellence, in the sense of a bad system will beat a good person every single time. And we had to very much look at all aspects, very much concurring with the research from this morning, looking at the quality of communications that we were offering, the reliability and responsiveness, and listening to the key sharp messages the school principals were telling us. Again, as alluded to several times this morning, the trust in the principal, trust in the CNO, that feedback coming back loud and clear with each one of the 16 principals we were fortunate and privileged to work with, highlighting the importance of that relationship. Reducing the bureaucracy, the administration timelines, again, those messages coming clear very, very sharply from each of the principals we were working with. The CERC allocation for special schools, and again, each of the special school principals highlighting that, and a response that's very much acknowledged in the recent government announcement for additional special education teaching posts in special schools. The behavioural concerns that a lot of significant work is going on in recent times in responding, listen very much to the needs of schools for the behavioural complexities that they're dealing with. We looked at every element of the exceptional review processes with school principals. We used reflective thematic analysis then with Braun and Clark in terms of listening to the key messages and putting a framework for improvement around it. And the messages were loud and clear in the sense we should know the children, we should visit the classrooms, we should engage with the SNAs they're working with, we should engage with special education teachers, teaching staff, and listen carefully to the concerns of principals and deputy principals. That message very much concurs with the insightful research we would have heard this morning. We looked at the speediness, the responsiveness in terms of quick, appropriate, effective communications in terms of decisions that were required by school principals. And again, they will be reflected. And we're progressing each of those recommendations in processes as we speak. In terms of frontline delivery, we also looked at the formation of teams in terms of building on teams we had for sensory, tertiary, professional development, autism and behaviour and curriculum that we were looking at. It was mentioned this morning several times, innovation is the bedrock of special education support and development in this country. And again, we were putting in place the teams that we would have ensure a constant supply of the quality of innovation that was required. But knowing is one thing, and it's certainly not enough. And we very much were looking at to move the important step, the fundamental step of moving from knowing to doing. This slide speaks for itself in terms of models of professional development, theory and theory and modelling, and practice. Again, a 5% improvement in terms of teacher individual practice. And ultimately, the punchline in terms of quality engagement is when you have teaching, modelling, practice and coaching taking place. And I'll just show a short video with you at its best in terms of demonstrating the impact and when all those contributions come together.
Fionnuala Burke, first class teacher, Cara National School. The notion of having table-free mornings or table-free days was a new concept, but we tried it. The children loved the freedom of being able to sit where they wanted in the room with their buddy usually. I was initially apprehensive and a bit worried as to what it would entail for me as the teacher. The class I had, although small in number, were quite demanding in terms of individual needs. The children really enjoyed the table-free days when they lay on the floor, knelt or lay on their backs. We did lots of practice, me giving simple instructions with the task broken down into very small steps. In September, they could not stack their chair without bumping into each other, and even holding their chair was a challenge. Once the children could hold the chair correctly, we then worked on moving with the chair and finally stacking the chair. After about a week, they could manage this routine once I said, stack your chair. We then moved on to moving and stacking the tables.
My name is Siobhan O'Shea, Senior Occupational Therapist with the School Inclusion Model. Movement is a method of multisensory learning, which is when students are supported to use their senses to learn about topics. When we engage our senses, which include our sense of sight, sound, touch, smell, taste, and our movement senses, we increase our ability to experience success in learning activities. Integrating movement into lessons can benefit students to regulate their energy levels, maintain attention and concentration, as well as increase their physical activity and reduce the time spent being sedentary. Using multisensory approaches in learning activities can expand children's toolkit for self-regulation, as well as developing executive functioning skills.
They were often more relaxed as the engagement level was increased. They knew on the floor they could sit whatever way they wanted, lie on their tummy, sit cross-legged, kneel up, so that they had the freedom and autonomy. They felt that was great. They were taking ownership of their learning and engagement, and therefore their energy levels were balanced and they were more engaged. As time went on and I became more aware of the benefits of the movements, we added these into other lessons. We gradually went from 1 morning to 2 mornings to a whole day and ended the year with 2 whole days a week of no tables or chairs. I also found that when the children were engaged in this way, it made it easier for me to get down and support them, which in turn helped their engagement and their learning.
Sometimes we just stay in a spot, but if we need to do writing, we can go anywhere we want in the classroom. And if we're doing a project or a group thing, making a poster or talking about Irish, or not go anywhere in the classroom. We like sitting on the floor for English or SCSE and Gaeilge, because it means I can concentrate more, because on the tables I have to recipes. Yeah, because I have to bend and called I was going to say all the pencil cases are on the table, and it's really hard to get them off, and all the colours are sometimes all over the place. So if you're reading or something, it's more comfortable doing crisscross applesauce than just sitting down and going like that. And your neck is really sore after you're finished with your work, because you have to look down and do like that. There's some one thing that you have to tell the teachers. Well, that when you're on the floor, you can't do double sitting on the floor, because that's what our teacher told us to, because we'll hurt our legs.
Alan Hobbins, Principal, Cara National School, County Kildare. Anytime a new idea, a new approach is to be trialled or implemented, it needs someone to be willing to think outside the box and step outside the comfort zone. And thankfully we have such a staff here in Cara and a teacher who was willing to do exactly that. Of course, once we see the success and hear how worthwhile the initiative is, more and more people are willing to give things a go. This tapped into the long established culture we have here in our school, with such an effective staff who are happy to give things a go for the benefit.
And the video speaks for itself. The young children speak for themselves, the school teaching staff, school principals, in terms of when you have that multidisciplinary approach, and what a wonderful transformation you can bring to individual classrooms in terms of teaching and learning activity. Very quickly going to take you through a number of developments that were progressing in recent times. Just going back to the behaviour framework that will be for primary, post-primary special schools in this country. And again, it will be an invaluable resource for all class teachers, special education teachers supporting students. And again, we have a multidisciplinary team working under the leadership of Sharon Healy, progressing that framework. Again, the bedrock to that in terms of ensuring a top quality framework will be consistent engagement with stakeholders. And to date, we've linked up with NAMSI, Inclusion Ireland, TES, ASAM, and school leaders and school teachers. And there's more to come in terms of ensuring the quality document. The principles underpinning it will be it's right-based, promoting student voice, inclusive, promoting regulation, neuroaffirmative practice, and again that is very much solution-based, and again under the principle of universal design that we'll hear so much later on this afternoon. It's very much a 6-step framework in terms of enhancing the knowing and understanding of behaviours within schools, building relationships, gathering more information, creating supportive environment, and testing and piloting supports, and again refining and improving in the process itself. Emer's wonderful presentation this morning showed us in terms of the importance and significance of history, in terms of where we come from and what we've developed as a country in terms of supporting special education. That image and message is not lost to us in terms of the visiting teacher service, and again a picture of those pioneering teaching staff in Cabra in 1891, 60 years later in terms of 1950, and in more recent times in terms of the support service at a variety of levels for deaf, hard of hearing, and visually impaired and blind students that we're privileged to work with. And there are a snapshot in June 23 this year, looking at consistency in terms of our practices and approaches to functional assessments, and again availing of international expertise. And just back from October 23, just last month, a tremendous conference in Birmingham, again taking on international dimensions that we want very much reflected for the benefit of young students, families and schools in this country. We also want to keep the standards of commitment and compassion, marry that with the highest standards of software. And again, in recent times with our colleagues in the department, working on the benefit of the Argus software. And again, we have a schematic overview of the caseloads of each and every visiting teacher in this country. What that allows us to do is that we can compare caseloads, we can see where VTs have capacity, where unfortunately they don't have capacity, and allows us to make accurate recommendations around placements of new posts, and we can see in terms of the effectiveness of student support, and then we have a complete overview at all times the geographical anomalies that occur from time to time. Emer alluded to the single track, the dual track, the multi-track approaches in terms of the European context. Within the NCSE, we would very much take that on board and also have the wider international influences and research. And I suppose what's coming through, and some discussion evolved this morning in terms of a definition of inclusive education. And the one thing in terms of looking at the international research, inclusion is a philosophical concept on community and is a value system, not a place or a particular set of learning circumstances. What's very key is it's not a particular place, and our understanding or awareness of what actually inclusion must bear that in mind. And you can, again, scale back to legislation, the research, the policy. The most important thing about inclusion education in this country will be about attitudes and beliefs in terms of what we want for as a society, for our young people in particular, but as they grow and older and take on their meaningful participation in society. The international influences, and we're so fortunate to have so many schooling communities up and down the length of the country abiding by these principles already. And they must take the position that all children have the right to a quality education. A policy of zero rejects. In other words, each and every child has an opportunity of being enrolled in their individual schooling communities. Every child is afforded the opportunity and the right to be and learn together, and that they're in the least restrictive environments with peers of the same age. And again, very much concurring with Emer's reflection with us in terms of teacher practice, that national policy must ensure that teachers have the knowledge, the appropriate assistance and professional development they're required to teach all their children well. Underpinning of all of that is the necessity of pre-teaching training and substantial teaching practice. There has to be, and again, many speakers referred to it this morning in terms of professional development, it has to be ongoing to ensure that teachers can adapt to changes in what they teach and how they teach. The necessity of having guidelines for students with special education needs, because without guidelines, you will, it's inevitable, have different practices. And again, in terms of individual education programs, that there's the voice of the student, the parental voice and contribution is equally reflected and embraced within that. Very quickly, going to take you through in terms of two particular exciting initiatives that very much, I think, are embracing those fundamental principles in terms, first of all, towards our inclusion project. That involves the sharing of 20 schools, primary schools working with 5 primary schools working with 5 special schools, 5 post-primary schools working with 5 special schools up and down the length of the country, and again ensuring the sharing of expertise, and very much led by Patrick Whitlow, who I'm delighted to say is in the audience with us this morning. The principles, I think, are very much important for the Towards Inclusion project. It's all about improved classroom practice for the benefit of students with additional needs, ultimately with a view to improving their educational outcomes. It's about upskilling staff in knowledge and identifying supporting teaching learning needs, and the sharing of expertise and additional needs and models of inclusion among schools. The bedrock in terms of improving practice is learning from each other, and this particular project allows us a very invigorating, exciting opportunity of maximising the contributions of that wonderful practice that is taking place in so many individual schooling communities. The second project I want to share very briefly with you is the transition project. This forms part of the comprehensive employment strategy. And again, it's looking at, there's so much investment in terms of supporting students with additional needs in this country. we also have to be looking at next steps, what happens after post-primary school. And this particular project sets out to do exactly that, involving in working with students with additional needs in a number of schools in Galway and Dublin. And again, learning in terms of looking at improving pathways for young students once they leave post-primary schooling. And again, sharing that expertise and putting it at disposal right out through the benefit of every school, post-primary school in this country. And again, exciting initiatives in terms of what potentially could be achieved. Just maybe broaden the lens a small bit as I conclude in terms of inclusive education, but we must remember the education is only one facet of our society at large itself. I was delighted to see that Minister Byrne launching 2 days ago in terms of the movement breaks in primary schools, and very much with the direction of the Irish Olympic team, and again bringing physical activity into classrooms, very much linking up with the school inclusion model video that I would have shared with you earlier. I was delighted to see yesterday with Dublin City, again setting out plans to be the world's first autism-friendly capital city, and again very much increasing our awareness, our attitudes, value building in terms of what we mean in terms of supporting children and adults with additional needs. And again, that we're fully embracing it and the various initiatives that particular plan will progress. Again, an initiative we're delighted to become involved with. Our colleagues in JMB and IPPN would have been working in recent times with ASAM, and we have very much joined forces with them with a view to building on the success of the Autism Friendly School programme in terms of the benefit that it brings. In concluding, I'll come back to what gets us up every morning, what fires our belly in terms of what we want to bring to supporting special education. And again, it is about promoting excellence and equity for all. And again, I'll go lead with this statement in the sense, for me, inclusive education, and especially from an early age and preschool, stands out as probably the best tool to teach kids through real practice that they're all equal. If education is not inclusive, then how will we teach them to include others when they in time will inherit the world? Every child matters and matters equally. And again, it's up to all of us working collaboratively, setting our standards in terms of service delivery, what we want for students like Sean, Joy and Laura. Just on behalf of the NCSE, we're very much looking forward to the challenge for the years ahead, building on the success to date, but again enhancing service delivery. And again, very much looking forward to working with each and every one of you in your various respective roles and the expertise and insights that you bring to the NCSE. And very much thank you for the time you've afforded me in sharing the presentation with you. Thank you very much indeed.